It descended in a time of great disruption in the ancient digital world and rescued the world from complete collapse. However, all of the details of that era are a mystery until today. Digimon is an over 20-year-old franchise, but the history of many of our favorite Digimon still remains in the shadows. But today, I intend to show a possible light on one of the most important and powerful Digimon ever, Imperialdramon. As I want to give more time for the whole story, it'll be broken up in parts and will allow for more depth and enjoyment. I also just want to tell people that I do utilize a lot of basically the things that we have available, that being card game art, maybe some theories, but mostly headcanon that I'll establish. But I do try to go off the canon of what exists. However, since we don't have concrete timelines and we don't have concrete explanations to things, I usually try to put it together as much as it does to make sense to me. So take that with a grain of salt for those of you who say maybe it won't be. But the point is, I'm trying to do my best just to make it make sense to some of you guys. But without further ado, let's begin. Now, as I want you guys to enjoy this better, I will break this up into parts, as I do think it'll allow for more depth and ultimate enjoyment. Now, starting with the origins. Now, obviously, this is obviously up to speculation, but I do think the plausibility is easy to create with the various bits and pieces we have. First, let's try and understand the chaotic ancient digital world. Now, the Vmon and Wormmon lines are of these ancient clads and are some of the first Digimon that exist. Their possession of the free trait is a sign, as free literally means free of attribute. In order to combat the limited Digi-evolutions and to increase the chances of Digi-evolving at all, the Digimetals were created by these Digimon. Now, this pseudo-evolutionary process offered Digimon an ability to access more of their world. One theory I have is that the Digimetals themselves were forged from fragment data collected from the 10 legendary warriors, as conceptually this would make sense. From the timelines we are given, there are some clues as the existence of the Royal Knights prior to the defeat of Lusamon, and the obvious links to the 10 legendary warriors that would eventually pass their power down to other Digimon of different clads. Now, with this knowledge, we can assume that the 10 legendary warriors must be in slumber at this time, but their data must be floating around for others to work with, and eventually they will be awoken. As one of the links that I usually like to see that Digimon Frontier actually showed us was that the fact that when the legendary warriors eventually were defeated and they went off, and they split themselves into two spirits. Now, these spirits themselves, if you actually really take a look at them, are essentially just Digi-armors of data. Now, the reason I want to bring this up is that for there to be a refined version of this would mean that they would have had to have known what they were creating. And in this case, I do think that this may have been a key as to how we had the hybrids, the spirits themselves, appear to the Digimon Frontier cast, and eventually how the humans were able to use them with their detectors. Now, moving on. For the use of armors and armor evolution, it enables Digimon to easily draw upon great power. For this reason, armor evolution was always viewed as dangerous, as I do believe this means that the Digimon that would constantly use the Digimetals themselves and not their own power would continue to seek out more power. I wouldn't say it's like a drug, but I would think it's more of using something like, I guess, enhancements or maybe tech. The reason I would say against drugs is maybe the armor itself isn't going to make the body more dangerous. It's more of the user making the armor. It's basically the idea of the user using the armor and that making them corrupted, and not the other way around. In this instance, I believe that both Avimon and Wormmon, utilizing the Digimetals of Courage, eventually digivolved into a Flamedramon and Shadramon. This could be from any event, but we do have the card arts, obviously. Now, normally the Digimon would revert from the metals, but this is where the origin story would reach its next plateau, as I do believe they remained in their metal forms on purpose. Now, it would obviously draw more power, as I do believe this may have been to defend their homelands, but I do think that this would be very dangerous, as we would learn later on that in the card game itself, both these two Digimon can DNA digivolve with each other, And I believe that this is what happened, and eventually they were pushed in a battle too hard to the point where they would have fallen, but because of their bond with one another, they were able to DNA Digivolve and become either Imperialdramon or Dinobemon. Now, I'm not saying here that they were the ones to discover DNA evolution or anything like that, but more so, this was one of the very first instances maybe that we could see in the ancient digital world of Digimon performing this task or this ability. The importance of this is not just the fact that they set up the Imperial line in their evolutions, but is the fact that two armored Digimon did this at all. As I do think this would have come at a cost, as we would see they probably began to be even more battle hungry and powered up as this form would obviously not be able to come apart either. As I do think the problem that stems from this story is the fact that these Digimon probably didn't want to give up the power that they had and only sought more. Instead of sometimes taking a break, they just kept pressing on, and this wore out their minds. Now, the next step of the story is going to be with the Black Digitron and how their lust for battle and struggle for survival may have put them on the road of destruction. Next, we must discuss the Black Digitron. Black Digitron, for those who are wondering, well, if it is mixed with someone in some form or other, they will temporarily take on a black appearance, and during that time, their power will increase. As I do believe that in order to further their power, since they were ultimate Digimon, they were probably coming up against the Digimon that were the most dangerous in the digital world, being Megas. And ultimately, in order to supplement the power difference they still lacked, they were probably utilizing Black Digitron that they found. Now, I do believe that Black Digitron was rather unexplored at the time by many Digimon, and those that were utilizing it probably were some of the first. This will tie into another theory I have later on, but I will continue on talking about this, as I'll get into that in another video. I believe that ultimately for them, though, this would be a mistake, as some Digimon were able to eventually integrate into their bodies, absolutely changing either their appearance, their form, or even their own species themselves and turning into something different. In the case of some Digimon, Black Digitron overcomes them and makes them viral and vicious, making them into feral variants of themselves. Now, I do think the problem with this Imperialdramon or Dinobemon is that by utilizing the Black Digitron, it slowly drained away its thought of the basically compassion it had and focused it on becoming a destructive killing machine. As its lust for power grew, this Digimon eventually lost complete control. And when it finally was able to digivolve even further into Imperialdramon Dragon Mode, Black, it was completely unable to control its power at all and went berserk. This destruction itself would lead to many Digimon's demise, and even though all Imperialdramon Dragon Mode would have wanted was help, its path and lust for power would be its ultimate downfall, as the only ones who would have eventually come to its help, to its aid, would be those who were there to stop its rampage altogether. Now, for those wondering, this story is very important, as it just doesn't just show in light of Imperialdramon, but kind of shows the story of ourselves. That when we have very little, we do what we can to make up for it. But as we progress down the line of basically the ability to grow stronger, whatever we sacrifice in return may lead us down a further path of destruction. As we know very well, that it is one that parallels many of us. Even though we may have the best intentions to seek strength, if it begins to go up to our heads, we may destroy all that we sought after and be forced to accept darkness in order to cope for our failures. Now, this is Brad from the Ed Army, signing off for all of you out there to sign on.